So hello everyone from the Kingdom of Thailand once again. Now, I don't normally talk about Twitter drama, sometimes I do, but there has been this discourse going around on Twitter, and if you're not aware, you might have seen it cross over to YouTube. It's if the left are bad at talking to men, and I'm guessing by men they mainly mean like straight men in a lot of ways, and because it's so Western centric, this conversation, a lot of the times we're also talking about straight white men, and I thought I'd talk about it today for this video. But what I didn't want to do is start talking about other creators and make it some sort of drama. You guys know I try and stay out of all that stuff because I find it unhelpful, and if I start talking about some other creators' take, then I feel like people just take sides based on who their favorite creator is and stuff like that. So I just wanted to talk about the general issue. So if you think like I'm responding to some creator that you're a fan of, I'm probably not. Like, I purposefully didn't watch the videos that I've seen on my feed about this. I just want to talk about the general issue of if the left are doing enough to talk about men's issues. And hot take, I generally think they are. But I think you're going to have to watch my whole video to see my framing of it, because a lot of the discourse is about how it's the left's fault for people flocking to Jordan Peterson or men's rights activists or even Andrew Tate. I find that pretty bizarre, especially in terms of Andrew Tate, because he's just like so extreme. It just takes like another level to transition from just like typical misogynist to someone like him. So we're going to talk about that. And if we're having this conversation mainly talking about the online left, I think people need to remember the context of the online left. Like, some of you guys might be younger. Even since I've been starting making YouTube videos, I've seen the left grow so much. When I first started, there really wasn't an online left, especially like a more Marxist leaning left as well. And obviously in terms of like political issues and stuff like that, anti-SJWs, anti-feminism absolutely dominated YouTube, which people need to remember. And it's only in the last 5 years or so, or maybe even like 4 years or so, we have more left-wing creators who are becoming really popular, and they're becoming popular without being astroturfed by a massive media organization like often conservative figures are. So people need to often remember the reason that left-wing people aren't as popular as right-wing people is because there is no left-wing Daily Wire. There is no left-wing Daily Wire giving out contracts to people like how Daily Wire signed up Jordan Peterson. There is no massive left-wing media machine which can feed the masses our message, which can feed it prominent figures. Our only super famous like left-wing figure is Hassan, and he's an outlier. And even with him, he started his career by working at the Young Turks. So I just want people to keep that in mind when we talk about the broader question of, are the left doing enough online to talk about men's issues? And I also want people to think about men's issues beyond the realm of like, how do I pick up women? Or what's the best way to approach a woman in a bar? Or how do I sustain a relationship and stuff like that? Because I think men's issues are often framed in this very narrow view of like male pickup artists and stuff like that. Where even on my channel, I've talked about plenty of men's issues which have nothing to do with picking up women or having relationships with women. So we're going to get into all of this today. Please like the video. Also follow me on social media at the Kavernacle on Twitter, but also on Instagram. Instagram is where I'm posting about all my travels, all my stories which have documented my travels. They're all archived on my profile page in my highlight reels. If you care about what I've been up to over the last like 4 or so months, go check that out. Also consider becoming a patron. I want as many $1 to $3 patrons as possible, and the benefits of which are getting access to the Discord server and getting my Switch friend code. Also, there's one travel video up at the moment. I'm going to edit the second one hopefully early next week. You also get access to those exclusive videos, and also check out the subreddit and check out my second channel. All of that stuff in the description. So I said I'm not going to call out other creators, and this guy doesn't seem to be like a creator, so I don't consider him to be one. But this is the tweet that kind of set off the discourse. So the reason young men flock to alt-right MRA movements is because the left gives brain-dead advice to young men. We need to be more compassionate to them for our own sakes. So I have problems with this framing, mainly because he doesn't actually give any examples of the so-called brain-dead advice apparent leftists give to men. But it's also funny that this framing is also done by right-wingers pretending to be leftists. So a guy called David, we're going to get into who this guy is in a sec. David tweets, "Fascism, if we win, you are guaranteed to have a wife and children. Leftism, if we win, you deserve nothing. If you can't get laid, then die a lone loser. Stop being so entitled. The world isn't supposed to make you happy. Wow, I wonder what draws men to fascism." This guy apparently claimed to be a leftist before someone found out he's called David Sharat. And there's actually an article about him on the Daily Mail titled, "Anti-feminist student reveals he won't party with women in case he's accused of assault, says he may stay single forever, saying, I'm an anti-feminist, I don't like feminism, and I think it actively harms gender roles. Feminism promotes the narrative that women are weaker and need help from men. Nope. Now a lot of men are not getting the help they may need." So you can go read more about that guy if you want, but it is funny that supposed leftists are also saying the same stuff as people like this guy, and I feel just this whole conversation is really imagined. I responded to his tweet saying, when do leftists tell you, like, the world is messed up and you're going to die a lone loser, deserve nothing and stop being so entitled? I literally advocate for an ideology where everyone will have their material needs met and you won't have to kill yourself working just to live, right? So what is this invention of leftism? These people are saying that we give terrible advice to men and we tell men they should die a lone loser. As like a straight white male, I have both never seen this and I've never had anyone say stuff like this to me as well. But this is like how the conversation is being framed. And I just find it like interesting that apparently the left are terrible at talking to men and the right are good. And he's talking about fascism promising men like a wife and a family, right? Also, fascists are lying, and fascism appeals to like a hyper masculine ideology. Fascism often reinforces like the old status quo. So a lot of people like it because it reinforces patriarchy and actually promotes an extreme form of patriarchy where men will dominate society. So a lot of men gravitate towards that ideology because they like it, not because the left wing are saying, you're a loser, you're entitled, you deserve nothing. But anyway, springboarding off this discourse, I just want to talk about like certain things that these people are saying is that the left are terrible at giving advice, and you know, people like Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson are filling a void where they're giving like good advice. But I would argue with Jordan Peterson especially, he's often just telling people what they want to hear. And the problem being, a lot of men are conditioned in a certain way. They don't want to hear the actual reasons causing their problems, because if you ask me, what is causing the majority of male problems today? I would say patriarchy and neoliberal capitalism. How many people who grow up in like conservative environments who naturally gravitate to Jordan Peterson want to hear me say that and actually want to accept that? I think some people on the left need to admit that a lot of people are raised in these conservative environments, and even if we give them the solutions, even if we tell them the root of their problems, they're not going to want to know about it because they're too brainwashed by the system they grow up in, and they will always gravitate towards more conservative people, mainly like Jordan Peterson, but even Andrew Tate, who reinforce this worldview and tell them that, you know, your problems aren't the stuff that you've been told your whole life are good, like patriarchy, like capitalism. It's actually feminism's fault. It's actually the left's fault. This has been going on for like over a century and stuff. It's not anything new. And sadly, as much as we try on the left to reach out to people, some people are just never going to accept it based on like arguments and videos alone. So on the subject of often telling conservative men what they don't want to hear, is another one is that men are the victims, and also no one cares about me because I'm a man. This is one I hear a lot. No one cares what I have to say. No one cares about my feelings. No one cares about anything because I'm a man. Now, here's a TikTok I saw going viral where people were talking about this. It's a video of various men responding to a woman who says, who do you call when you're at your lowest? A lot of them also say, no one cares about them because they're a man.
Who do you call when you are at your lowest? Who is that one person?
Nobody. I'm a man. No one cares.
Nobody. I'm a guy. Nobody gives a shit.
Speaking for the guys when I say this, literally no one.
No one. I'm a man. No one cares.
So someone like Jordan Peterson and Andrew Tate will see that video, especially Jordan Peterson, because I've heard him say stuff like this, and he will say, you're right. Society does not care about you because you're a man. It's been overrun with feminism. All we're doing is trying to appease the women now. Patriarchy is fundamentally good, but now no one cares about men and men's feelings. And social isolation isn't a unique male problem, but I will admit that because of patriarchy, men are often told to bottle up their feelings, not talk to people, and they feel like they cannot talk to people about their problems, and that is the root of these problems. But Jordan Peterson says, no, patriarchy is good, society just doesn't care about men. And would these men who are saying, no one cares about me because I'm a man, would they rather hear that, yes, society doesn't care about you because you're a man, and it's because of like left-wing agendas, left-wing politics? Or would they rather hear that, yeah, the same system that victimizes women also creates these gender roles which harm men as well, and it's called patriarchy? Do you think they want to listen to that answer? And you know, some of them will listen, and some of them will come around. But the way men are often conditioned, this is not the answer they really want to hear. And just like with just general far ideologies, it provides easy answers to complicated questions. I'm giving you the more nuanced answer, but of course, saying to someone, yeah, you are a victim. You're a victim and it's X, Y, and Z's fault is far easier. And that is why Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson can be more appealing sometimes, because they don't have an actual answer. They have an answer which sounds good, which is simple, which is easier to repeat, which is easier to promote on social media, but they don't have an actual answer for it. And if you fall down the rabbit hole of liking these people, you're going to feel even worse about yourself, right? So I feel the main way to tackle the influence of Andrew Tate, Jordan Peterson, is to tackle their whole worldview and ideology and expose them for who they are, rather than someone on the left becoming like a Jordan Peterson alternative, or even, God forbid, an Andrew Tate alternative to provide disenfranchised young men with a new daddy, with a new role model, because I just don't think that fits in with left-wing ideology anyway. Like, you're not going to get me making a video about a top 10 dating tips and stuff like that, and you can say, well, that's the fault of the left, we need to do that. But that's not what I'm going to do to help with this conversation, to help with talking about men's issues. And then there's the fundamental thing we're missing out on when we talk about, can we have a left-wing alternative to Jordan Peterson or Andrew Tate, is that these people are grifters. These people do it for money. They promote these things for money, clout, and influence. And if you're a principled leftist, you would put out advice because you want to help people mainly, but helping people often means telling them things they don't want to hear. But these guys tell you what you want to hear because, like I said, easy, simple, but it also helps their grift. They tell you you are a victim. They tell you it's society's fault, but they miss the actual problems within society like patriarchy, and they make something up. And even with Jordan Peterson, who does have like legitimate self-help advice, it's always within this capitalist framework and this individualist framework where everything is a you problem, and everything is a you problem you must overcome. Addiction, it's a you problem. When it's a personal failing, nothing systemic about it. So then you spiral and feel even worse about yourself because you feel like you are the odd one out, everything is your fault, and there are no systemic issues at play there. That is just my take on why there can't be like a left-wing alternative to Jordan Peterson and Andrew Tate. Could the left be better at giving self-help advice? I'm not even sure about this. Let me know in the comments, do you know anyone you feel on the left who is good at focusing primarily on self-help advice? So now I want to talk about, like, are the left actually bad at talking to men? I will admit that I don't really see many left-wing alternatives to like self-help gurus and pickup artists. I don't even know if that can exist. I'll happily admit that, but I will completely reject that just the broader left are bad at talking to men specifically and talking about men's issues. And I believe there are two elements at play there, like leftists talking about men's issues and leftists appealing to men, and they are pretty similar, but I admit there are some nuances there. But just generally, within the traditional masculine paradigm, there are left-wing alternatives to the right's domination of like traditional masculinity. You guys might not know this in America, but think of the socialist football clubs. Many football clubs spring out of working class communities. They often spring out of communities around places like factories. And you have socialist fan bases of clubs like Liverpool, one of the biggest clubs on the planet, Celtic, another massive club, St. Pauli, a second division team in Germany. And although even being in these left-wing communities supporting these football clubs don't fundamentally end your misogyny or anything like that, it is something you can enjoy in a traditionally masculine sphere like men's football and still have good socialist politics. And it's called like the people's game, the working man's game, for a reason, because it often is about this community. And when you have a more leftist slant and you can be like a man's man, go to the pub, watch the football, play football, do all these traditionally masculine things and still have socialist politics, it's just a nice community that I feel like the left has done a good job with, but it's more like organic, obviously. But if we're talking about the online left, we're talking about people even like me, for example, left-wing YouTuber, I still think we are doing a good job. And obviously a lot of you people won't be YouTubers, so I'm going to break down analytics and talk about this. So I wrote this tweet thread in response to like this discourse, and I'm going to read it for you, and then I'm going to expand on it even further with other videos I've made where I actually talk about men's issues. So I reject this narrative that the online left are terrible at talking to men in general, and I just kind of want to back up what I'm saying as a YouTuber to show we're actually good at it. So I'm never going to be able to reinforce a worldview that is inherently misogynistic or pro-capitalist, but the thing is we don't even need to compete with them by doing this. The online left is doing fine changing young men's minds. So I'm a YouTuber, obviously, and a large share of my audience are young men. Here is some data. The teenage category is very small because teenagers will say they are 18 on Google to get age-restricted content. So young people are 30% of my audience, nearly 80% men. This is a rough estimate, of course, but it's clear I'm reaching a young male audience. Here is one of my most popular videos over the last 8 months about Jordan Peterson. I have several others. I'd bet due to the topic, the amount of young men who watch this are higher than my average. On this video specifically, over 60% of people who watch this video are not subscribed to me. So a communist YouTuber criticizing Jordan Peterson has reached 60% of people not subscribed to my channel and can potentially influence them. I guarantee that the bigger streamers and content creators probably have a similar gender and age breakdown, and of course have their videos which do so much better than mine. How many young men are watching these videos? This is Hassan on Peterson and Tate, and these videos have millions of views. Also, Hassan fits in with traditional Western masculinity, works out and talks about it, plays sports, and is also a straight white dude. And here he is criticizing the manosphere and reaching millions of people. I'm not even saying that the masculinity he presents is a completely perfect alternative to Tate and Peterson, but he is a left-wing alternative, someone who talks about all this stuff and criticizes it, and he's one of the most successful streamers on the internet. At the end of the day, most prominent online leftists are straight dudes who make a living by talking against the manosphere to an audience of largely young men. That doesn't seem like a group that doesn't know how to talk to young men. So before people jump in the comments, I know a lot of the discourse is about talking to young men about specific male problems, but what the point of that Twitter thread was to say is that so many young men are watching men just like them talk about these grifters like Tate and Peterson and showing them how bad they are, how dishonest they are, how they are conning you, how they are not selling you something viable. So at the very least, the left are becoming more successful at getting young men to watch content that goes against these people and hopefully also have their views change. And even I might be a part of that. I get people watching the Jordan Peterson video who aren't subscribed. Maybe they become part of my audience. A lot of people have told me I've influenced their politics. And if I've influenced their politics and they like what I say, then it's pretty likely they're going to reject this pro-patriarchy, self-help message from people like Jordan Peterson or this extreme misogyny from Andrew Tate. Yes, you can say, well, you're not giving them a solution to their problems, but now they are on our side, right? And they're not going to gravitate back to these people once we've exposed them. So that is a good thing that online left are doing. But like I said at the start of the video, let's also remember, we are not astroturfed by media organizations. We aren't a curiosity for the media. Like, remember Andrew Tate scheduling a fight with Jake Paul or going on Piers Morgan? No one's asking me on Piers Morgan. Jake Paul doesn't want to fight me because I'm not extremely controversial. So that's where so much interest has been generated around Andrew Tate and to a lesser extent Jordan Peterson. But again, he's astroturfed by the Murdoch press, by the Daily Wire. He's forced into the public spotlight and he's kept in the public spotlight far longer than he's deserved to and far longer than the controversy he whipped up really warranted, because there's so much money funding these views. And why, in the case of Peterson particularly, he reinforces the status quo. He reinforces patriarchy. He literally says patriarchy is a good thing. And of course, now he's promoting conservative politics, which uphold the whole status quo, including capitalism. Simply put, The left cannot compete with that one-on-one, but what we have been doing well in recent years, and let's remember the YouTube landscape before the rise of BreadTube, there are more of us reaching more young men, telling them capitalism is bad, patriarchy is responsible for a lot of your own issues, and we should reject the teachings and preachings of these people. That's something we are doing well. So the notion that the left cannot talk to young men is just not based in reality. I have the evidence there. A large chunk of my audience are young men. Most of them are from Western countries like the UK and America, where people like Peterson and Tate are probably the most popular. I'm clearly speaking a message that young men are accepting, and it's clear from even people telling me I am influencing their views, and that means if they were ever likely to be a person to accept the views of Peterson and Tate, they're not going to do it now, because me and hundreds of other left-wing streamers, YouTubers, and creators have reached them first and shown them what their real issues are, what is causing their real issues. It's patriarchy and capitalism. That's why I outlined at the start that a lot of men don't want to hear that, because they will naturally gravitate towards Peterson and towards Tate because of how they've been conditioned their whole life. But there are lots of people outside of that who haven't made up their minds, who haven't been completely brainwashed by their environment, who we can reach and who we can talk to, and who we do talk to as well. Just because we don't tell them how to pick up girls all the time doesn't mean we aren't speaking to left-wing men. And that's why I reject the framing broadly that far-right people know how to talk to men and left-wing people don't. We clearly do. And we are also doing it without major funding. This whole channel is just me. There are so many YouTubers who it's just them, and we're doing it on our own, but thankfully we're being funded by Patreons, by kind people who will watch our videos and stuff, and that allows us to spread our message too. But yes, we can't compete with Rupert Murdoch, and Hassan is literally like the peak of the leftist online space. And think about how many comparable people the right have. That's just the uphill battle we're fighting. But we've always been fighting this. The left has always been fighting against the status quo. It's not anything new, and it actually gives me hope how much more prominent people on the left are getting who speak against the status quo, be it neoliberal capitalism or patriarchy. So to go a bit further into me personally, I've also tried to make content where I talk about my own experiences in a patriarchal system and how that's caused me my own issues. Now, a video I made in September 2021, I talked about Thor in God of War Ragnarok because he was depicted as a larger dude with a bigger gut, and the internet went mad. Primarily, men were going mad, talking about how he wasn't like Chris Hemsworth, he didn't look like the God of Thunder. In this video, I expanded on it, talking about the general male culture, like all the celebrities we fed, Love Island stars, and how we are fed this perfect male body image. Now, the perfect male body image, I think, is what you see with people like Chris Hemsworth. It's someone who's super jacked, but they aren't massive like a bodybuilder. They're kind of also lean as well. It's like the best of all worlds. And people like Chris Pratt would go on the press tours and say, I just did this through hard work and good eating. Although clearly most of these people use performance enhancing drugs, they all pretend they don't, getting into a pretty toxic culture about male body standards. So I just want to play you a couple clips from my own video talking about this to show you how, yes, people on the left do talk about men's issues from a straight white man's point of view and talk about how these systems influence us and make us feel bad and how we have to fight these systems to start feeling better about ourselves. It is the goal for men these days to be desirable is to have these great bodies if you want to be a success with, I guess, women primarily. And that's what you should aspire to be like. So I think it's just so damaging to men as a whole that we feel like we need to look like people who are millionaires and get their trainers, food, nutritionists, everything paid for them so they can star in these big movies. But I guess when that is all you see, most depictions of heroic characters look like this. They never look like how Thor looks in Ragnarok. Now, I want to talk about myself here as well. And like I said, I recognize it's stupid. I'm 6 foot, nearly 2. I am in good shape. I exercise all the time. And here's a photo of me now, which I feel like I don't look as good as either of them, but I'm happy, content enough. But in the back of my mind, I always have this thing. I could look better, I could look better. Why don't I have a 4-pack? Why don't I have a 6-pack? Why don't I have that with bigger muscles? And I've always tried to be this individualistic person and stuff and not care what people think. And broadly, I don't care what people think. But it's just the general culture that really, I think, has got to me over the years working out. And I feel like this feeds into a lot of male inadequacy, and they, I think, in my opinion, wrongly blame women for this stuff. They act like women don't love men unless you look like Love Island, so it's women's fault for doing that stuff. But women don't control like society, right? They don't control these advertising companies who use models who look like people from Love Island. They don't control shows like Love Island. They don't largely direct Marvel movies. They don't largely dictate the casting of Marvel movies. There's a lot of women working in these industries, of course, and they do make these films. But by and large, it's a male thing. And males push this stuff, and it's very telling. All the 4 discourse is pretty much done by men, saying this guy is fat and doesn't look like a god and stuff like that. And I saw a lot of women saying this guy looks good and they find him attractive and stuff. And I think that's the main problem. So I feel like this 4 discourse to me just reaffirms something I felt like for a long time, is that it's a self-sabotaging thing by men where we will ridicule people for being larger, and we're all guilty of it. I've done it throughout my life and stuff. It's just a toxic thing that we're all like indoctrinated with. And for me personally, how it's affected my life is I just never feel happy with my body. Like, it's not a body dysmorphia thing. I'm not depressed or anything, but I've never felt happy. I'm happy enough of how I look, but it's just a little thing in the back of my mind where I will never be happy. And I feel like it's this cultural osmosis where, because every male I see in terms of like actors and in terms of like models or TV stars and reality stars is this unattainable goal.
There was me specifically talking about men's issues and how we cause these for ourselves because of patriarchy and how much men control certain things, how we create these body image, and then so many of us feel inadequate. We feel like women don't like us because we don't have 6-packs or giant muscles. That's just us trying to be like what we are being fed. And many people like Peterson blame women for that. And many people on the right blame women for that. Women are putting unrealistic body standards on men. And yeah, maybe some women in your life have done that. Maybe some women influencers have done that. But by and large, we do this to ourselves. And with this Thor Ragnarok example, it was mainly men calling him fat. It was mainly men complaining about this. And it's mainly men bringing down other men for looking this way. And you see lots of men on the right fat shame women all the time. Like recently, Steven Crowder was complaining that an overweight woman was working out. Jordan Peterson was saying like someone who's larger isn't good looking. And of course, they're obviously saying that because they're misogynistic, but also being fat is not exclusive to any gender identity. So what people are seeing from them is, yeah, being fat is bad, being a different body shape is bad, and it's just something reinforced by like our body image standards. And men have often historically also created the body image standards for women as well. Patriarchy is a system that men largely benefit from, but men have to realize it's also a system that causes so many of our issues. Like that video saying, I can't talk to anyone, I'm a guy, no one cares about me, because of patriarchy giving us these gender roles where men have to be stoic, not talk about their feelings, not talk about their mental health problems. And then I was talking about my struggles with my own body image. That's because I see like Chris Pratt, Chris Hemsworth, I see all these people telling me, you can look like this, it's so easy. And I even spoke about this with the Liver King recently, these fitness influencers who make it seem so easy while lying about not doing performance enhancing drugs. A lot of our issues as men come from this conservative status quo, and you have to be in a left-wing mindset to accept this analysis. And I just feel like a lot of the people who gravitate to Peterson and Tate we're always going to do that, and there's no saving them. So we don't have to try and out Peterson or out Tate from a left-wing point of view. I feel it's more effective to get people into a left-wing frame of mind so they can accept the true analysis of the world and what causes their issues. And primarily, I want people to be happier first before thinking about things like relationships. I want people to be in a better headspace, and I believe that starts with realizing these people who give you easy answers either don't have your best interest at heart or are trying to brainwash you into some other conservative ideology. So what this video is trying to show is I think left-wing people are good at talking to men and are good at talking about men's issues. Just some of the things we're lacking, I guess, is we don't have the solutions all the time. But the thing we need to remember is the right wing also don't have the solutions. The worldview that is being fed to young men by Peterson and Tate is not going to help them. I'd argue it would make them far more miserable, because you're rejecting reality. You're rejecting the systems that make you feel bad as a man. You're rejecting the systems that create this toxic masculine expression and expectation. And instead you're buying into some grifter who's trying to say, it's all women's fault. It's all women doing this. It's all like crazy leftists and crazy liberal feminists, instead of a conservative patriarchy and status quo, which most of us suffer under, and we also suffer under neoliberal capitalism. So hopefully I just added something to this conversation. I'm not calling out any creator. I don't even know what most people said about this beyond some tweets I've seen and stuff like that. But it is a narrative I've been seeing for a long time. And it goes even further back to this conversation. People used to say it's the left's fault that Donald Trump was the president of the US, basically taking any agency away from so many people who voted for him to reinforce their like racism, bigotry, and prejudice, and basically saying the left went so crazy, they turned these voters onto Donald Trump themselves. And I've seen people in the conservative subreddit who have said that like Joe Biden went so crazy communist that now I have to just vote conservative forever. And people like that, you're just not going to help. You can't help them. They are too brainwashed. They're too conditioned by the system they grew up in. We don't need to think about these people. The same way some people on the left seem to have an obsession with reforming people on the alt-right. I really don't care about that stuff. I honestly feel like some people are just lost causes, and that's sad and that sucks, and a lot of people are predisposed to gravitating towards the manosphere, especially the more extreme elements of them, and nothing I'm going to say to them is going to change their mind. What we have to do is target the people who are unsure about this, who don't really know, and show them early on that these people both do not have their best interests at heart, and promote a system that will make them feel worse. And like I said, since the rise of BreadTube and all the offshoots, I feel like the left, particularly online, are doing this way better than they have ever done, because now we have a way bigger platform. But we are never ever going to be able to compete with the right in the same way. We are never going to be able to go one-on-one with the right, because they are funded by the status quo itself. Anyway, that is it for the video. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments, and if you made it this far, thank you for watching.